What is up, everybody? It is a special broadcast of Listen Up with Limmie. I am your host, Limmie Pulliam, and I appreciate you guys joining me today. Um, we've had some huge developments in our industry recently, and so we decided to kind of push a show that I'd been wanting to do for a while. We had to bring it up just a little bit because it's kind of pertinent to what's going on. But I want to welcome to the show. We're not going to take up too much time. I just want to welcome to the show my guests today, Alex Fletcher and Sarah Fraser from Fletcher Artist Management.
Hey, Limmie.
Hi,
Hey
Limmie.
guys, what's going on?
Not much. Excited to be here.
Good. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been a crazy few days for us in this industry, and let's just talk about the elephant in the room real quick and get it out of the way. Earlier this week, one of the biggest agencies in our industry, that had been in business for 90 plus years, closed its doors, and CAMI, Columbia Artist Management. And I think it took everyone, including its own artists and agents, by surprise that this happened. And I know that you guys are really good friends, and it's, the agents, just like most of the singers, are a really close-knit group of people. How did that news affect you? What did it catch you guys by surprise as well?
Yeah, very much by surprise. And, I think Sarah and I both immediately, our thoughts went to the managers and the artists that we know who were all personally affected by that news.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something like that doesn't happen without this pandemic for sure. I mean, this pandemic in our industry has destabilized everything to such an extent. I think in every situation there are other factors at play, and every situation is unique. And certainly with Columbia Artists, we don't know all the specifics as to why they decided to close. But
Right.
we know obviously what the effects of that will be. I think our hope is that the vocal division, which at the time that they closed comprised 3 managers, our hope is that they will start their own enterprises and join us on this side. Sarah and I have always been on the boutique side in our careers, and I love it, doing this and having the freedom to collaborate and to be creative, and working within a larger agency is a special thing and a really valuable thing. But I think doing it the way that we do it as well is really enjoyable. And my hope for our colleagues is that they'll be joining us, and hopefully it'll be very much business as usual, and we'll continue to all work together and alongside each other.
Agreed. I think there's been, throughout the pandemic, there's been a lot of innovation that's been happening, both for artists and organizations and agencies now as well. And I'm hoping that the big thing that comes out of this is this innovation comes over to, management and boutique agencies, and hopefully these folks who choose to continue working in artist management, this is a good opportunity for them to kind of roll with the punches and do something new and exciting.
Well, how do you think such a huge change and a huge shift affects the future of artist management right now?
I think that in terms of the vocal work, which is the bulk of what we do. I mean, we work with some wonderful directors and conductors as well, but most of our roster is vocalists. And I think with Columbia Artists, the managers we're most closely associated with are the vocal managers. But I think, it does signal a shift that maybe has been in the making for a little while. I think we've seen that some of our colleagues at IMG and have also decided to go out and form boutique enterprises. And so I think there's been a little bit of a shift over the last few years with that. And I think we'll continue to see that trend in the business. I saw Matthew Horner, our wonderful colleague from IMG, interviewed with Karen Slack last night on her wonderful series.
We had a really great conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think Matthew kind of reflected that as well, that we all see the business kind of maybe our part of the business moving into some smaller enterprises that are flexible and nimble. And so I think I think that we'll see that. And And I think that can be a good thing. I think, this art form, it's always changing. It's always evolving, and the structures we have in place have to evolve with it. So it's interesting to see how that unfolds.
Now, coming from me as an artist, my biggest fear now is to see when you see a giant like this fall, and you wonder, you really have to start to wonder about the companies and where they stand and how they're going to survive throughout this pandemic. And it's a scary thought to think that companies that we have worked with in the past may not be there in the future. And do you think that shift is also happening within the actual opera companies and orchestras and as well?
I think we saw a little bit of this back in 2008, and then of course we lost some very well-known, well-regarded companies as a result of that. And I think one of the things that has come out of the pandemic is that people realize that this art form is more imperative than ever, and not just opera, but classical music, everything. Like, where do we get all of this entertainment from during this pandemic? Like, we have to pay for it. And I think people understand the value of it through all of this. And I'm hoping that after this initial shock and these initial months, that this rebounding will happen and donors will continue to donate. Many companies have had really generous donors who've been able to help, pay out fees for canceled productions, et cetera. And people have really stepped up. And I'm hoping that will continue to be a trend. Of course, endowments, things like that, from are things that have taken a hit. And I understand that might affect people, what they're able to give to organizations as well. I'm trying to remain hopeful overall, though.
I think Sarah was on point about, we will see some similar repercussions to 2008, where, this is this industry, there's always an element of fragility to it. And so there will be some companies who were leveraged in an unfortunate way, or were in a down period as a company, cash flow wise or whatever else. And maybe that threatens their existence, and maybe they do have to close. And obviously we always, we hate to see that. We want as many opportunities for artists and for presentations as we can have. But I think that, there's always a resiliency in this art form. And I have no qualms that we'll continue to see that, and we'll continue to see this art form supported.
Good. Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's I'm sorry, I lost your audio there for a second.
Can you hear us?
Okay, there you are. Oh, there
Testing.
you are. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Now that we got the elephant out of the way, let's talk about you guys, Alex Fletcher, Sarah Fraser, the dynamic duo,
The dream team.
the dream team, exactly, from Fletcher Artist Management. So tell me a little bit about you. Let's start with you, Alex. Tell me a little about your upbringing, your beginning, how you came into where you are now, into the artist management field.
Yeah, so I've always had a love of music. I, sang in choirs in high school, and in college I started to take voice lessons, and that's really where my familiarity with art song and opera began. And looking back on it, my grandparents were huge opera fans. My mom's parents lived in New York, were Met subscribers. Even after they moved to North Carolina, they still would go to New York to go to the Met. So I'm sure it's in my DNA somewhere, but to love classical music. But I didn't discover it until late high school, early college. And I really loved the music, and the performing part of it completely terrified me. And even trying to get on stage for a student recital with 7 people in the room, I was like really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So, I figured that the performance aspect wasn't going to be for me, but I did like the art form, and I started to learn about the business side of it. And I had a wonderful friend who's still my friend, lifelong friend, Carl Rosenthal, who knew a ton about the opera world and really encouraged me to explore the industry side of it. And so I had an internship at Washington Opera in the public relations department, and I had an internship at the Alexandria Symphony Orchestra outside of DC. And then, yes, exactly. I got my degree. I got my degree at Mary Washington, which is a great liberal arts school in Virginia, and then I did a round of informational interviews my senior year with managers to find out what that was all about. Went to New York and spoke with 9 or 10 managers, and Neil Funkhauser was looking for an assistant, and so he hired me over the summer after I graduated from college. And in October, I moved to New York, and that's where my career in artist management began.
Wow. So starting out as a new artist manager, what was it like? How did you start building the relationships that are so necessary for the job?
Well, it was great working with Neil because, it was his company. It was run out of his apartment. We had a really nicely sized roster of about 35 artists, and we had some really wonderful artists and human beings on that roster, and there was plenty to do. So I started learning. I started doing things quickly. It was definitely a different time. We still had to fax things in 2007, which I'm kind of shocked that faxing was still happening, but we still were faxing, and the hard materials were still coming through the mail with the CD and the cover letter. I mean, now Sarah, if she gets a copy of hard materials in our mailbox, she'll take a picture and send it to me because it's like a novelty item, But back then, people still did the submitting through the mail, and it was different. We did a lot on paper still, but it was really exciting. And I mean, I was young. I was out of college, and I was really happy to go to the Met 3 or 4 nights a week, and to go to auditions, to just to meet with people. Anytime I met with a client by myself, that was like a really exciting thing. And so it was really just an energetic start to learning all about it, and to being in New York City and being young. I mean, it was cool.
Nice. Sarah, tell us about your start.
Sure. So I have, so my family was always involved in music. I did all the stuff at church with my grandma, and in high school started taking voice lessons with Dr. Vern Yenny down at Wichita State, and decided that's where I was going to go get my bachelor's in voice. And about halfway through, long story short, I had a surgery on my back, and when they intubated me, they used too large of a tube. So I had some temporary vocal damage for a while.
Oh, wow.
And had about a year. So I did 5 years for my undergrad. I had like a year where I was a voice major who couldn't really sing. And the woman who was the head of the opera department, Marie Ellen King, she said, "Hey, Sarah, why don't you assistant direct The Marriage of Figaro for me?" And that was like what started like all the lights turning on, realizing that like, oh no, I'm supposed to be on the other side of the table. So I eventually, things got fixed and finished school, but realized that I wanted to go off and work on becoming a stage director. So I went and got my master's from Florida State in stage directing, 2 wonderful, really tough hands-on years there, and then spent years working as an assistant director, stage manager, freelancing for various regional opera companies, summer festivals, and decided to make the move to New York. And originally was looking for part-time work to help offset all of my freelancing. And Sam Snook, who, is a VP at IMG, was one of my best friends from Wichita State. We met moving into the dorms day 1 of college, our freshman year. And we have some good stories. And he was like, you should, here's this Opera America job listing. You should reach out to Alex because he's great. And so I did. We had an hour-long coffee that turned into a job offer a couple days later. And, 8 years later, the rest is history.
So let's just go back just a bit and tell us how you got from Funkhauser to Fletcher Artist Management, Alex.
Oh, well, I got fired. So it was really easy. This is, it's a very interesting part of my journey that, I was 24. I'd been working at the company for 2 years, and, Neil and I, we were in the office every day together, just the two of us. And I think there were a lot of really wonderful things about our relationship, but we also saw a lot of things differently. And, I was obviously much younger than him, much earlier in the business. And I was receiving a lot of positive attention. And so I'm sure that I was quite cocky. I'd have to go back and check the notes, but it wouldn't surprise me. And, and I think that it just started to develop a dynamic that wasn't working. And so, unexpectedly, I got fired. And, it was like a Saturday where I got an email saying yesterday was your last day. I mean, I was,
wow.
in a full tailspin. And, the amazing thing now, I can look back on it and, I realized all these people kind of rallied to me. There were artists on the Funkhauser roster who said, look, are you starting a company? Because we want to work with you if you're starting a company. And there were people in the industry who said, look, do you need seed money to start a company? Like, we'll give you seed money. What do you need? There were just a lot of people who, even in that 2 years, felt like I had shown them enough that they were willing to commit and to believe in me to some extent. So, it was within a couple of months that Fletcher Artist was opened its doors. I mean, planning started, quite soon after, but that's where it came from. And so it was very much a gamble, albeit I was lucky that there were really wonderful artists that committed to me right out of the gate, and a number of those people are still on the Fletcher Artist roster today. So so it was a wild beginning, but it turned out very well.
Yeah, so that was 2009 when you founded the company, and for the first 3 years you were basically on your own doing this, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how did you juggle the artists that decided to come along with you? How did you juggle your time between each of those artists?
Yeah, I mean, it was very organic. I just it was a continuation of what I'd been doing at Funkhauser Artists that seemed to be working, that people seemed to respond well to. I mean, I've always been very prompt with communication, and that was like one of my big hallmarks from the beginning. I think, it's actually interesting as you mature and as you grow, you kind of look at things and you can see the other side of it as well. I mean, sometimes you don't want to respond quickly to something. Sometimes you want to let something sit and see how that response develops. And for me, that's something I've had to learn because I've always wanted to be so quick and so instinctive. But, from the beginning, it was just about work ethic and quick responses and, trying to do things in the right way and in the honorable way that created trust with the artists. And so, yeah, it was I didn't have a playbook. I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing, and I was asking a lot of advice. I had a lot of mentors, and I was asking for a lot of help. And I will say, the managers in the business were so generous with me. Ken Benson, from the beginning, at that time he was still a Columbia artist, was so encouraging of me, and everybody just welcomed me into the fold, which was really, really helpful and really valuable.
Now, fast forward to 2012. That's when, as I like to say, Batman found his Robin. And Sarah comes into the picture and joins the team at Fletcher Artist Management. So how did you transition from backstage or, behind the scenes in the theater to the artist management side of things?
Yeah, I think like what Alex said, it was a very organic process for me. Having this background as an assistant director and stage manager, I have that side of the brain skills in addition to the creative directorial skills. Mm-hmm. And so, sending an email that's written properly is, not a hard thing for me. I mean, hopefully. And, just like sort of skills like that, organizational skills are things that I, feel like I'm pretty good at helping kind of innovate FAM with some of the stuff we've been working on, whether it's, Overture or the predecessor to what we've been using to help organize contracts and client calendars and things. But the other thing is that my vocal training, has been so helpful with knowledge of repertoire, understanding who on the roster is good for what roles, how their voices will develop over time. It helps when liaising with companies and proposing, giving suggestions for casting opportunities. And so a lot of that transferred in a very natural way over to the artist management world.
And if I can just jump in, I mean, when I hired Sarah for the part-time position, I mean, I had met with I would probably say I'd met with 12 to 14 people, each for like an hour over that coffee, the way that Sarah and I did. And so, I mean, I'd met with like quite a few people. And I mean, first of all, I really just enjoyed her energy, and we had a really good connection in terms of just speaking the same language and getting along. But also, I mean, the thing that I found so interesting about her was the diversity of this background and the well-roundedness of her background, because everybody comes to artist management from a different place. I mean, you just heard our stories. They're completely different. And, what I thought was so fascinating was that she had done a little bit of everything and knew kind of a little bit of all the parts of how this business works, which I just think is incredibly valuable. And I think that's proven to be the case.
So in the years you guys have been together thus far, I know from my experience with dealing with artist management, I've had a pretty good experience thus far. Only one really nightmarish experience. Have you run into any of those cases where it was just you just couldn't work with an artist?
I think, I think it's important to say, just like so many things, I mean, not every management is the right fit for every person, and not every working style fits. And, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day how regarded two different people are or two different parties are if they just don't fit. And I think we've had some experiences where we didn't know. Love you, Indra. Thanks for tuning in. Indra Thomas, awesome.
Yes, the fabulous Indra Thomas.
Fabulous. We had some experiences with people where we didn't know that we wouldn't speak the same language, and we wouldn't work the same way, and we wouldn't have the same goals. And I think, the key is, once you figure it out, you're honest about it and you're open about it, and because we all want everybody to do the best they can and to spend their time as wisely as they can. So we've never had any nightmarish situations that I can recall. Sarah can set me straight, but I mean, definitely, yeah, but we've had times where we thought things were going to go a different way than they did, and we try to get to know people before we work with them, so we have some sense of that, but you just really never know until you're doing all the work together.
Now, and you've managed to keep your roster fairly small. With that being said, what do you look for in an artist that you feel you would like to represent? What are you looking for? Is it someone who you think fits within what you already have, or are you looking at what you have and seeing what's missing and then looking to fill those gaps? What are you looking for in the artist that you represent?
Sarah, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I don't think we ever specifically look for, we need this voice type on the roster, so we need to go out and find one of those. Our focus has always primarily been the artists themselves, who they are, and what is unique about them that they bring to the roster. So we're always keeping an eye out for people who, aside from obviously the vocal talent itself, what the storytelling aspect is for them, what makes them special, what story do they want to tell as an artist and as a human being, and also how do we vibe with them? Do we have a similar feeling about how their career wants to go, and also just, is it somebody we want to work with and talk to day after day?
Yeah, I think the personal aspect of it is really huge for us. I mean, when I started out with Fletcher Artist, I never really got into the whole thing about having someone for a specific voice type or a specific role. I don't know that we've ever had a Rodolfo, like a consistent Rodolfo on the roster, except for certain periods. Like, I can pick out other roles like that where it's like the Queen of the Night, like we've represented sopranos who have sung it a little bit and like maybe liked it or maybe didn't, but we've never added people because they do a certain role or because they sing a certain thing.
Tick off the boxes.
Yeah. Our biggest thing is really just, that we have a connection to them individually. And I think that, to your point, Limmie, about how the roster, has not, I mean, we've been around the same size for at least the last 4 years, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 years. And the reason is because we want it to be manageable. We want everybody to have the time and the dedication that they need. And it's become, more and more important to us that we understand the individual artists, that we're passionate about their story, we're excited about them, and then we see, where is it going in the industry? How does it fit in the industry? Sometimes we don't know, and sometimes we're not sure what path the career is going to take, but we're excited about the individual and we want to make that commitment, and then we'll all figure out the rest of that together.
Now, full disclosure, you all actually represent me, and I couldn't be happier to be a member of the fam. It's been awesome. So I've experienced firsthand this process of getting to know you guys before we decided to work together. Interesting story. When I started singing, I took a hiatus from singing. So when I first started singing again, I reached out to you all for an audition. And it was one of the few times, I don't know if it just got lost in the hubbub of things, but I never heard anything back. But fast forward a few years, as I was looking for representation again, and I started reaching out to, hey, Karen Slacks here. Hey, Karen, how you doing?
Karen.
I started reaching out to friends and colleagues and saying, look, hey, I'm looking for a manager, looking for new representation, blah 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 blah. And time again, Fletcher Artist Management kept coming up. And I didn't want to say anything at first. And finally I said, I reached out to them before, but I never heard anything back from them. And everybody said, reach out to them again. Send them another message. Send another message. And I fought with that for a while before I sent that message. And I can say today that I'm glad I did. Because not only did I get a response, I've gained a great management team, great friends, and I couldn't be happier. So I'm ecstatic to be a member of the fam, and so let's kind of move a little past kind of to present day, as many of us were gearing up for fairly busy seasons this year. None of us saw this curveball coming of a global pandemic. COVID-19 has basically just wreaked havoc on the live entertainment world at large. I know how it's affected me as an artist and how it's affected colleagues of mine as an artist. How has this affected you all as artist managers?
A lot. I mean,
Where do we start?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's a huge disruption to all the three of us on this call and people watching. It's a huge disruption to all of our lives, to how we've structured things. I mean, I'm married to a singer. Our life is normally her traveling with our daughter, me joining and staying home and being other places, and all of that together in a big soup. I mean, all of that, totally turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a personal effect to it, and then the professional effect, of course, is having to manage all of these cancellations and these disruptions to our artists, both in terms of work they were anticipating, art they were going to make, money, revenue, income, which is a huge issue. It's really, it is the most massive challenge that, certainly that I've ever faced, and so unexpected. So it can't be overstated.
Yeah, Sarah?
Just got nothing to add, but agree 100%. It really is like on such a massive scale, and it affects everybody from the singers to all of the stage hands who work backstage. Like literally everybody from every side of this industry is affected by it.
Yeah, I've watched as I've seen people start to evolve try to evolve and somewhat with the way things are going on. And you see different reactions. You see some artists are doing lots of in-home concerts and whatnot, and you have some artists who are just like, oh, I can't, no, there's no way I'm gonna, I don't like this. This is not, but it sounds like someone's having a little hard time in the background there.
I think it's my cat who's having a hairball right now. So there's that. Yeah. We're live.
We're live entertainment, folks.
Yeah.
So but as we've gotten kind of more into this pandemic, and it's kind of gone on for months and months. What did you all do? And I asked that because I even though I know the answer. What did you all do as an agency that I really haven't heard of any other agency as a whole doing this? You guys started having group meetings, correct?
Yeah, and I think we were actually late on the group meetings. Talking to our colleagues, I think that some people were meeting with their roster as a group much earlier. And I think for us, we were kind of still trying to take the temperature of everything that was going on and working through everything. And the first couple of months, we didn't really call everybody together as a group. We were trying to really talk with everyone on an individual basis. Mm-hmm. And then we decided that we would have our first group meeting, I think maybe in May, at the end of May. And it was such a uplifting experience that we were like, oh man, we should have been doing this much earlier, just because everybody really came together and supported each other on the most mundane, but necessary details about unemployment and other things, to just moral support. And, it got Sarah and I thinking, and then we already knew this. We already knew this is such a special group, but we really just, we were like, this really is such an exceptional group of people. We're so proud of this group. And then when we had those further meetings, our roster started to say, what can FAM do? We know that companies are giving us opportunities and that we're creating things for them. We're doing living room recitals and what have you. But what can FAM do to support each other? And so it was out of that conversation at the end of June that then we decided we would launch a subscriber channel. And the content would all be made by members of our roster. And, of course, Sarah was like, we just add an E on and it's FAME, we just add on Fletcher Artist Management Entertainment and it's ready, and so we started building this idea and Nicole Houston can't get found. I hope other people can hear us.
She's in her car, so she can't hear us.
But either way, we started building this idea and we were off to the races. The roster started coming up with ideas for what could be on FAME. We had an existing logo created by our awesome web designer, and Marcy Stonicus's husband, Brian Simmons, gave that a touch up to create the FAME logo. Sarah's husband, James, who's a fantastic DJ in addition to other skills, wrote some theme music for us. And we launched the platform 2 weeks ago. And
we got to give Scott his proper due for all the website stuff. Like, he's done an amazing job.
Yep. Scott Johnson, our assistant artist manager, he has done all the back end work to build the FAME pages, which are a different design and a different feel than the other pages on our website. And so we are working with a membership management software so that people can create an account, they can subscribe. And we've really got a wide variety of stuff on there. We've got Limmie singing from Brent, which has been a huge hit. We've got Theo Hoffman, a baritone on the roster, traveling the country in a Mercedes Sprinter van and taking us on the journey with him. Thanks, Miguel Rodriguez, one of our manager colleagues, for that comment. And the sky's the limit. We're going to foster and develop as many ideas as we can and create as much interesting content as we can. We've started meeting with companies, opera companies, and presenters to see about ways that we can partner, and we are getting super positive feedback. and we're brainstorming and we're coming up with exciting ideas. And that is so energizing during all of this chaos. I mean, to have something to focus on and to build and to be excited about and talk about, it's really worth so much.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to see all the amazing ideas that the folks on the roster have come up with, because rather than just being given stuff, like a company wants to have you do a recital from the living room, which is also wonderful, this really allows the roster to have some creative control over what they want to make.
Right.
And seeing that the ideas that people are coming up with are just amazing. And I wish that we could take half of them and actualize them, within, our capabilities at this current point. I think some people are thinking along the lines of like Bravo TV in like 4 seasons, which, hopefully we can work on that and get some of those ideas going. But it's been really fun. And like Alex said, it lets us kind of stay hopeful and keep us energized and excited and also busy.
Well, that kind of leads me, why don't we take a look real quick at the at one of our trailers for Fame, which we just released, and this is the content trailer. And so take a look at this.
One song, glory, one song before I go, glory, one song to leave behind, find, one song, one last refrain, glory, from the pretty boy front man. Come, follow me, and I will give you rest.
On July 16th, the world got the news that Herbert von Karajan had died at his home in Anif, just outside of Salzburg. And here's where I start to get a little bit confessional. It had never been my intention to get tickets for this concert. It was my plan all along just to sneak in and hide myself backstage. Well, I mean, I knew that most stage hands...
When I go out of door, 'tis different than before. We stay at 6 paces to lower the cases we don't want any more. We'll listen when Fauci talks. His words are orthodox. His wise admonitions will help our conditions, yet one man always balks. This most peculiar man, this angry orange man, so mean and so bitter and always on Twitter of science, he's not a fan.
Cheers.
Well, there you have it, the trailer for Fame. There's some great content on there, and if you haven't checked it out, I urge you to go and check it out. Fletcher Artist Management .com/fame. Just check it out. You won't be disappointed at all. So where do you all see this going from here?
Where do we see Fame going?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, I think we're getting to ask that question more and more, especially as we start to meet with opera companies and presenters, and they want to know, how we see this. Do we see it? A colleague of ours today asked me, "Is this a Band-Aid for COVID, or is this a long-term thing?" And I think the answer is both. I think that we started this as something that was meant as a replacement while we were working, struggling with COVID, and then I think we see endless opportunity and possibility for this. I think that in recent years, with how much media and internet has become a huge influencer in everything, people want to know about performers. They want to have access to performers. They want to see as much as they can of performers. And I think that Fame really allows that to be shown in like a really tangible way. And I mean, we're just so excited to see all the different ways that our artists can show people more of themselves, and more than what you see on a stage and in a theater, which is, I mean, there is nothing that can replace that experience. There's nothing that can replace hearing Limmie with a major, with an orchestra, putting that sound over the orchestra, spinning it to the back of the theater. There's nothing that can replace that. But if we can also show you Limmie finessing rent, if we can also show you Limmie sharing other parts about his life that you might not know that have helped him to become the artist he is, that's pretty amazing. So, I mean, we're really excited about it. We're really excited to expand the horizon and see where we can go.
Well, I for one am excited about Fame because I think it opens up so many opportunities for us to, as artists, to show sides of ourselves that most people don't get to see. You look back, I think of Will, who is just a fabulous musician and has gospel chops that are just out of this world. So I'm really excited to see what he does as part of this. But so you see this as not just being a temporary thing. Do you see the platform? Do you see this expanding to open up to other agencies, or involving artists from other agencies, or staying strictly within the fam?
I think long term, ideally, I think like having a digital presence, whether it's Fame or something similar, is going to be something that we're seeing more often through for other companies, even perhaps agencies, presenters, etc. I think that creating digital content is not something that's going to go away. And so being able to be, sort of on the forefront of that is exciting for us. And, even at least to be able to help start this conversation for other folks, and to be able to kind of be on the forefront of innovating and having these discussions with other organizations can only be helpful to them. And at the very least, it helps, our visibility to be like, this is something exciting that we're doing for our artists, that our artists are doing for themselves. And so I think it sets us up in a really nice place. And then in terms of Fame itself, I would love, I think in the long term, to see it expand, whether or not we're able to bring in outside folks, and expand in that sense, do larger scale projects, hopefully, lots of ideas floating out there, but we're only at the very beginning right now.
And I think it's important to give credit where it's due. And I think that, the Dallas network, the TDO network, David Limmie,
For sure.
they were the first ones who very early in the pandemic had the idea to show artists in a totally different way from what you would normally see on the stage. And I think Fame is kind of a mix, because we do have a musical presence and element, and a lot of the content is musical, although it's by no means restricted to that. But I think that this idea, the idea that TDO and that Fame, and I think others will pursue, is really interesting as a complement to everything. I think, I don't know that I see us in the business of producing longer musical performances, although we may get there and we may do it. But I think that we also see this as a way to produce complementary content that helps companies show their audiences who the artists are who are being engaged, or allow them to connect with them in a different way. John Moore's series, Sacred Legacy, all about religious music. I mean, we have so many people on our roster who began in the church, who were cantors, who have a very extensive religious music background. And some of them, they move beyond that. It's not really part of their musical life today. Some of them are still very much steeped in it. And so the idea that, we can tell those stories, there's so many opportunities for what this can do. And I know that some of our partner opera companies, especially the more innovative ones, they think that the uptick in digital consumption through Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, that's not going anywhere. And they see that translating to our business, and they see that that should be another prong of their presentations to their audiences. So I think we'll only see the digital aspect continuing to develop, and I'm excited. I mean, seeing what the Phoenicia Festival just did with Polska, with this virtual reality. I mean, it's amazing. Like, I'm really excited to see what kind of innovations we can have that complement the live form, because again, the live form is still really so singular, but there's so much we can do to complement it.
Now, as we looking forward, you have, what advice would either of you have for, say, the young artists that are out there who were just kind of at the beginning of their careers, of starting their careers, of even, getting out there to do auditions and whatnot, to have something like a global pandemic bring that to a complete halt? What advice would you have for someone whose career is potentially stalled for the next year and a half, 2 years?
I think that's so hard, because that place to be, I think, might be the most difficult for practically anybody in this business, because it's not like you've had your career long enough or going long enough that you have any, like money that you've made from productions to, like really survive on. So I'm sure everybody has, secondary plans or complementary jobs that they have, to keep going through all of this. But also, one of those big things for young artists is having momentum at the beginning of a career, and to not have anything happening right now, it's really difficult. I think one of the things that I always tell young artists when I'm doing master classes and things is that you need to have, like really great high quality video and audio recordings, because we know auditions in like a live format are probably not going to be happening on a really large scale this year. And we know some companies, like the Met National Council auditions are going to be virtual, at least for like the first round, et cetera. So while I'm not saying, go out and put a ton of content out online, you need to be prepared to, have this digital performance aspect ready to go, to have quality video and audio ready to go, if you need to send it into a company for a virtual audition, or even just to have. I know some people feel a lot of pressure to just put stuff out there because they see other people doing that during this time. But I try to caution against that personally, because otherwise there's so much out there and it just becomes noise. It's better to take the time and really put out something that you feel confident about, that is at a really high quality level, because then that does the work for you, as opposed to, quantity. It's more quality over quantity,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to 2008 and the economic recession, I mean, becoming an emerging or a young artist after that time became so much more challenging. It was just a different version of the business, a less robust version, just in terms of the amount of opportunity that was out there. And I think that since that time, it's been a huge risk to pursue this career. I think it always has been, but more so now. And I think that if you are pursuing this career, then a flexible mindset and an entrepreneurial mindset is more important than ever. Figuring out what are your side hustles that can work for you and that can sustain you during, what's probably going to be an unstable few years. That's really important. And I think, at least from our perspective, there's less stigma than ever in the business about people having side jobs or what they do. I mean, people on our roster who would be considered established artists often have to look to other means of income. It's just a reality of this art form. And if you're passionate enough about it and you really can't you can't be without it, then you figure out a way to make that work. But I think it's something that persists in more levels of this industry than people would think. And so, it's really just about having a flexible mindset and being entrepreneurial and doing what you can. I mean, to Sarah's point, if you can find a way to express yourself that's unique and that's engaging right now, that's even better. There's a guy, I wish I knew his name, unfortunately I don't, who's been making comedic videos about opera, and he did one where he played all the different singers who would be at an audition and kind of what their stock sayings are, and it was hilarious, and I mean, but there shouldn't be pressure to create those things. It's just, if that's something that speaks to you and something you can do, that's wonderful. And if not, just being flexible, being in that mindset, and aware of your surroundings, I think is really important.
Well, awesome. I want to give a shout out to some of the people who are watching. I've got some family members who are watching from Charlotte, North Carolina, and San Diego, and Michigan, and whatnot. So thank you guys for tuning in. And so what kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But what do you see as wow, I really did just completely just a total brain fart. And usually I have the best words, I have to, but as we've been talking about fame, we've been talking about the young artists. What do you see as, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this and without going too far off on a tangent. You talked about not putting too much content out there for the sake of just putting content out. How would you suggest a younger artist go about kind of censoring the content that they put out and deciding what is in their best interest, what may not be in their best interest, going forward from this point until hopefully we get back to a point where things are safe, that we can convene again and begin having live performances?
I think that's a good question. I think part of that is, as a young artist, you have your team of folks that you work with, your voice teacher, your coach, maybe somebody in the industry that you're really close to that you go to for advice or feedback. Maybe if you make a video or something, you can say, hey, can I show you this? Give me your honest opinion. Do you think it's, at a level that I can, make it public, et cetera? And being able to rely on folks like that, even if you don't have the confidence, well, first of all, if you don't maybe feel confident about it from the start, that might be telling enough. But to also be able to, have these folks that you rely on for an opinion, and like, oh yeah, that B flat was great, you should go for it, have
I think,
folks to rely on.
Sorry, Sarah.
No.
I think authenticity is really important. I think that authenticity always speaks to people, and especially in a digital medium. I mean, we always, with our roster artists, if somebody offers something in audition that they really don't like, or they don't really want to be performing, you can always tell, and I think that with digital stuff, it's very much the same thing. It's like, when something is really authentic, it really leaps off the screen and becomes like a real thing, and not just something that you're staring at. And I think that some of the things that I've seen people doing that might be unexpected, like the discussion series that Aaron Crouch was doing. I think, he's a young tenor in the business. I mean, there can be arguments about should people be speaking up, et cetera. But to me, it felt authentic, and I found value in it because of that. I think that being authentic and true to yourself is always like one of the major things that resonates with me, and I think with other people.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you guys so much for giving me this time, and I know you guys, even though we don't have a lot going on, you guys are still quite busy dealing with issues and still helping artists in ways that most people would never even realize. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to coming on and sharing your expertise and your years of experience, and hopefully those listening got something out of it.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Limmie. And I want
Yeah.
to say in closing that we're going to immediately launch an internal investigation into what happened with your first email to FAM and why it was not responded to.
Right?
But in all seriousness, we normally try to respond to people regardless, even unless it's like a Russian phishing bot. We try to respond to people. So I am appalled and apologize on behalf of FAM that we did not respond to you.
I'm
But
not holding a grudge.
I'm glad we got it right the second time. I'll say
I'm
that.
just saying, I searched the email. I have nothing before 2019. That's
Got it. We got to have an
this
internal.
was like several years ago.
Yeah. It's going to be a whole thing. We're going to give a press conference in the next.
No
week.
hard feelings, because it actually made me work harder. It actually made me want to, when I did
You're
reach
welcome.
out to you. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. But again, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys will join me in a couple of weeks when I'm going to be kicking off the Legend series with my first guest, who's going to be the amazing Grace Bumbry.
Fantastic.
And I'm so excited about this interview. And we'll be announcing a couple other names along those lines.
legendary indeed.
Legendary indeed. And I am so excited to get a chance to talk with her. So until next time, make sure you guys register to vote, wear your masks, stay home if you can, and stay safe. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.